Welcome back to Truck Check, everyone. There's so much to do at the ACT Expo. We couldn't get it all done. Obviously, you're not watching this during the week of the ACT Expo, but it's really not important. Today, we get this opportunity to catch up with somebody who's become kind of a favorite of our show, and that's Salim Youssefzadeh. And Salim is the CEO of what seems to be a company in WattEV that is catching on in the electric infrastructure space for trucks. I think he's got lots to say. Salim, welcome back to Truck Tech.
Great to
Good
see
to
you,
have you.
Alan.
Yeah,
Glad
all
to
right.
be here.
So, you have, I'll just start in with the whole idea of, you kind of challenged the industry a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, you're out there doing stuff, and quite a bit of stuff, and I've always, not jokingly talked about it, you've done with other people's money. You've done a great job attracting grants and bringing grants in and that sort of thing. Now you're expanding your fleet.
That's right.
And you can expand your fleet and you can expand your services, but there's a bit of a drag now, isn't there? You seem to be challenging the industry a little.
Well, I mean, if you've been watching along with ACT Expo and listening to the theme, a lot of people are blaming infrastructure as an excuse. And we're here to say infrastructure is no longer an excuse. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it takes time. But we're out here doing it. We're spending our own money, getting infrastructure online, and not only putting infrastructure in the ground, but building it towards the future. So we're the first to have a functional megawatt charger operational in Bakersfield site. And just like Tesla did earlier this week, WattEV came out and did the same challenge to the OEMs. We've got MCS chargers. It's time the manufacturers get their act together and do the same thing. And we're ready to buy them when they're ready.
Well, interestingly enough, a few weeks ago, that's exactly the headline I used. That was the message from Dan Priestley at Tesla was, come on, guys, get in the game.
Yep.
Stop doing it the way you've been doing it, which is, kind of step by step, very linear approach. And I don't want to just repeat what we did there, but I think it's important as we go back to, I guess your debut was it 2 years ago in Long Beach, is that correct?
That's right.
When you were introduced, and you didn't have quite as nice a display as you do today.
It's a little smaller back then too.
Yeah, a little smaller, but I think that you've caught on in certain ways. I mean, you've made some significant announcements. Take me through the last 6 months of what you have announced, and let's just quickly hit those.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we've been opening more and more sites. To date, we've got 4 sites operational. That includes Port of Long Beach, which is right within the port compounds. It's about a 1.5 acre site, has 5 megawatts of power, ability to charge 26 trucks at once. That came online last year. Since then, we've opened up 3 more sites. That includes one in San Bernardino, right in the Inland Empire area, very close to a lot of the distribution centers there. We're getting a lot of interest from carriers for that site actually already. And that opened, just 2 months ago. In addition to that, there's Gardena, and then Bakersfield, which is our flagship. And Bakersfield was a site that was actually the first that we took into development when we started the company, and it was the latest to come online. And it really tests all the different technologies. So when we started the company, we wanted to model Bakersfield after a traditional truck stop. And that's, a truck stop can fuel 200 trucks per day. That equates to 25 megawatts of power.
Right.
You're not going to be able to get 25 megawatts of power from any utility day one. And so we wanted to take that opportunity to see if microgrids can work towards electrification in areas where you may be grid constrained or want to do something towards resiliency.
Help me and maybe the audience a little bit.
Yep.
We hear the term microgrid, but explain it in layman terms.
Absolutely. So Bakersfield is 115 acres. And over there we have the land to build out a solar and battery storage center. So microgrid is really, we have a set of chargers that works completely islanded and independent from the utilities, meaning that we've got 15 240 kilowatt chargers, as well as 3 MCS megawatt chargers at that location that's running off of 5 megawatts of solar and 3 megawatt hours of battery storage. And again, that's completely independent from the utilities. And then we have another set of chargers on that same property that is getting power from the utilities for 6 megawatts. So, outside of the daylight hours or when needed, people can use the utility set of chargers, but during sunlight, energy is essentially free to us, and we can really reduce the cost. So on an average basis, we're also going to be, more competitive against some of the others.
I don't want to phrase it this way, but I will. You seem to be a bit ahead of things. People haven't quite caught on to the idea of both the idea of having a microgrid as a backup, or not even a backup, but a companion type of charging, and even maybe the idea that, as you said, hey, we're here, we're ready to go, bring your trucks. I think we have to talk about how you're approaching the truck as a service side.
Sure.
You're expanding your fleet from what to what?
So right now we've got 26 trucks. By the end of this year, we're going to have 180 trucks in operation, which would be the largest electric truck fleet operating in the U.S.
Okay, and I know you have Nicholas. I know you have
We've
Volvos.
tested them all. We've got BYD, Nikola, Volvo, and Daimler. And really, when we started the company, we wanted to be the main infrastructure provider. But very quickly, we realized we can't just have infrastructure sit there without any use. And that's when we started looking at the capabilities of the trucks, how they perform in various conditions, and to really create a model that caters to the owner operator. Right? I mean, they're at the end of the day, they're the main users. They make up 70% of the industry, but they're the ones that can't afford any of this. They can't afford the truck. They can't afford to build the infrastructure. So we wanted to see how can we make it as easy as possible for the owner operator to get into that.
You get it's interesting. I think we talked about this at one point. The HVIP program, which
Right.
was originally targeted and was taken advantage of by the big fleets.
Yep.
They had people who could write grants. They had
Yep.
people who could, sort of get in the door
Right.
first. And little guys didn't have much of an opportunity.
Right.
Now CalSTART, which administers that program for the CARB, for
Yep.
the California Resources Board, is basically shifting that money, really starting in 2025,
Yep.
to small fleets, including allowing you to kind of come in as proxy, or how would you call that?
Yeah, so it's more of a service provider or a fleet provider.
Yeah.
And like you said, CalSTART has created the HVIP program, which was more catered towards the larger fleets taking advantage of it. And now they've added more incentives on top of that, geared towards the owner operators. So if you're
doubled, I believe.
Yeah, so
right?
if you're an owner operator, meaning that you have less than $20 million in annual revenue or less than 5 trucks in your fleet, you would qualify for that extra top up, which gets you almost 90% off the purchase price of a vehicle.
Okay, now you're getting closer to being able to truly afford it. I know we've seen some examples, and they're one-offs really, both on hydrogen and on battery electric, where if you got in at the right time with the right mix of incentives, it was like, wait a minute, I didn't spend anything for this.
Right.
But that's not really going to be the way it is going forward. So as a truck as a service, again, a good thing to explain to people, you're basically saying, here's the package, here's everything. You write me a check a month, or you transfer a certain amount of money every month to me, based on usage, correct?
Based on usage, and that's why we created our own transport company also, because we wanted to test the capabilities of the vehicles, test the network, as well as build the relationships with the shippers, because that's where really the load starts from. That's where the money is generated from. And we build the relationships with the shippers, and they've opened up their entire portfolio of lanes to us and said, what does it take to electrify all the lanes that we have in the nation? And we can very quickly do an analysis and say, okay, these are the ones that would work now. And then it becomes more of an optimization problem of how do we increase the utilization of the trucks so that, an owner operator or a transport company can make more money also running an electric fleet.
This is densifying the lanes, right? Making dense lanes. You have a project, I think you're still working with Uber Freight, is that right? And they have gobs of data.
That's right.
And I imagine they share that, or at least partially share that with you. Give us an update, if you will, on what's happening. What have you learned? How far can that go?
Yeah, so it comes down to the utilization of the trucks, right? I mean, you have on one side a $500,000 truck, and even though you're getting a good amount of grants, it's still an expensive asset, and you want to utilize that asset as much as you can. And for us, it comes to, can we generate roughly $1,200 in revenue per truck per day? At that point, you're at par or better than diesel in a lot of cases. And we're seeing just that. I mean, if I have a truck that's running from Inland Empire to the port or vice versa, and I do two loads a day, you're getting to roughly that $1,200 mark in revenue, and you're doing about 300 miles a day. And that's the goal, and that's where we're taking all this data, not only from Uber Freight, but also with the shippers like Procter & Gamble, and seeing how can we make that, how can we expand that, and also scale that out. And we've been doing that very well within the fleet of trucks that we have today. That's also why we're expanding by the end of this year to 180 trucks. I mean, we've got 4 sites online. That's 20 megawatts of capacity, ability to charge 200 trucks a day right now. 26 trucks isn't enough. So we want to have more trucks. We want to get it out there in the hands of owner operators. And in addition to that, the sites also cater to those that have purchased their own trucks, right? So just like you said, the expensive trucks, the early adopters are going to be the larger carriers that can afford it. Like the NFI, Schneiders, JB Hunts, they've all purchased electric trucks and have charging behind the fence, but they also need more. And they're going to come.
Are you looking mostly at top off for them, or are you looking at?
It depends. Some of those customers want just a top off opportunity charge where, they're a little nervous on the range, or they just want to come to our site, top off, and get back. Other carriers will come in and say, can we domicile the truck at your facility? And at that point, it really becomes more of an optimization from their side of, as well as more of a you know, convenience for the drivers. And so they can domicile the truck at our facilities. We'll give them a valet service, or you know, we'll move their truck around if needed, and then at the start of their next shift, they just get in the fully charged vehicle.
That goes back to what we used to talk about with the Pony Express. Remember
Yep.
when you used to talk about a Pony
That's
Express?
right.
Is that what we're talking about really? It's a
In
valet
a sense,
system?
yeah, in a sense. I mean, some of those carriers will come in and do slip seating with the vehicles. So they'll have maybe one that's domiciled in Long Beach, another one that's domiciled in San Bernardino, and then they can just do the scheduling a little differently so that you have two trucks doing 2 shifts per day, and you always have a fully charged truck on the other side.
Sure. Let's go back to the MCS, the
Yeah.
megawatt charging for a minute, because I think other than just, you know, telling everybody they need to get with it, I think there's something else here. You've described to me previously that you can take megawatt charging, 1.2
Yep.
megawatts of power, and split it out. How many ways? Why don't you walk through that a little bit?
Yeah, so the technology that we have is our own. I mean, we really wanted to stay ahead of the industry and push it forward in terms of megawatt capability, but we also want to cater to current technology. And Charge America, which is a subsidiary of WattEV, is doing just that. Our second generation product is a 1.2 megawatt power cabinet that can dynamically share power between 5 240 kilowatt CCS dispensers or one 1.2 megawatt MCS dispenser. And at that point, you're sort of future-proofing your sites, especially as the standards keep improving for MCS technology. And you know, you don't have that issue of extra capacity because I can still utilize the CCS chargers when needed.
When I hear from fleets and really OEMs that we don't really need MCS charging, you're saying, yeah, you do, but for right now, this is the way you need it. Eventually, you'll need it to take the full load. Obviously, the Tesla at 750 kilowatts is closest and really far and away ahead of anybody else who can do anything with MCS right now. But you can split it down and share it and that sort of thing.
So I mean, so just to add a little bit more to that, I mean, the reason why I think we need MCS is when you look at the trucks that exist today, it takes about 2 to 3 hours to charge. Whereas, you know, a diesel rest break fuel up takes about 30 minutes. So you're obviously faced with a lot of more constraints on an electric vehicle than you are with a diesel truck. And because of these constraints, we have to create this sort of scheduling problem of how do you optimize the vehicle, how do you minimize downtime and so forth. But if you really want to get to long haul freight, if you really want adoption to scale massively, we need to reduce the dwell time. And the only way to do that is towards megawatt charging.
Sure. So today you could take the one that you've got operating in Bakersfield, you said? That's where it is. You could split that out, you know, to 5 240s. Now there are trucks that can take 240 now, right? That's I think Freightliners can and some of the others. And I know I was in Germany and I did get to see that, like the and it might well be the next Freightliner in Cascadia, but the eActros 600, you know, they had, I used to call it white space, kind of created a white space for an MCS charger. They've got it there.
That's right. I mean, we've seen Europe and others outside the US way ahead of what we're doing here. And we would love to see that same technology come here at an accelerated rate. And as mentioned, we put that same challenge out there. WattEV is ready to see manufacturers step up. We want to see MCS capable trucks now.
Let's talk for just a minute about the whole infrastructure thing. You know, PACT has got a lot of attention at the ACT Expo, at PACT being the Powering America's Commercial Transportation, I believe. I think I have that right. PACT, you're a member, right? And what kind of, I've talked to Don Fenton about this, but what kind of opportunities do you really see? I mean, you know, once you've got a seat at the table at you know, PUCs, you know, public utility commissions, that's what really surprised me. This isn't just about the trucking business. This is about sort of the whole.
Well, it's really to see how can we improve it for the entire industry, right? I mean, it takes a huge amount of effort from a lot of partners to push this industry forward. So part of PACT's mission is to really see what we can do on a policy side to move it forward, and that may be, you know, LCFS credits, it may be reducing or trying to streamline permitting issues in counties, or helping utilities find ways to move faster. I mean, a lot of the utilities, I know fault to them, have seen a lot of challenges with electrification, and PACT's goal is to see how we can help them do that. And then there's also things like federal excise tax that we're trying to pitch for on the vehicle side of things, where
you mean getting rid of it.
That's right. I mean, you have an electric vehicle that costs 4 times as much as a diesel, and you have all these incentives, but you still have to pay, you know, 4 times as much on the tax
And
for the electric
that only
truck.
goes back to 1917.
Yep.
It's not like it's a new kind of
That's right.
regulation. I think it really worked in World War I. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what it's done for anybody since.
Yep.
You know, Salim, I want you to go ahead and give us a little tour. I mean, the booth is a little bigger than it was 2 years ago.
That's right.
You also have some pretty cool properties. Why don't you take us around?
Sure.
So, Salim, you know, we've seen this chart before, this map before, and I think we've even used it in some of the work that we've done. Why don't you walk us through this? This is some charging routes that you've got. And
yeah, so this is the pipeline of sites that we have just in California, or as well as a little outside. So it covers the entire West Coast. As you can see, the starting point has been the greater LA basin area. We've got 4 sites online today. Another one actually in Vernon coming online within the next 2 months, which gives us around 20 megawatts of capacity. And this is our sort of pipeline that covers the entire West Coast. All of these sites are shovel ready. They've got grant funding tied behind them. So these projects are all in the works and will be online within the next few years.
Sacramento was a big one. I know you talked about that at one point. What's happening there?
Yeah, so Sacramento is actually a very large project. It's very much modeled similar to Bakersfield, where we wanted to test the new technologies. And actually, a lot of the main corridor projects are like Bakersfield, where they have a microgrid. So that includes our Sacramento site, Goostine, Taft, and Blythe, which is now going on the I-10 corridor towards Arizona. So I can go ahead and show you what we're doing.
Sure, why don't we do that?
Yeah, so this is a model of our Bakersfield site. Again, this site is online today. The site itself is about 120 acres, so there's a whole lot more land that we have undeveloped that you don't see in this model. But this model depicts about 5 megawatts of solar and 3 megawatt hours of battery storage that goes to a dedicated set of islanded chargers that we have here. So again, here, this is where we've deployed our second generation product, where we have a 1.2 megawatt power cabinet that can go to 5 CCS dispensers. So you'll see that these are the 240 kilowatt CCS dispensers. And here we have pass-through MCS lanes. And then as the demand grows, we'll be able to continue scaling it up so we can get the full scale of the project, where we've got an additional 6 MCS for the solar. Now, we know that you'll have issues charging outside of daylight hours, so you still need utility. And we do have, partners with Pacific Gas and Electric, where we've been able to get 6 megawatts of power from them, coming to another 16 set of chargers that are just on the utility side. And there we also
lit up over here. Is that what we're looking at?
Yep. So this is where we've got PG&E coming in, and actually what we did with them is that they brought in power at medium voltage on a power pole, and we have power poles behind the fence on our own property that we've paid for or implemented ourselves. That comes into a basically a containerized substation where it drops down from medium voltage to low voltage, goes through a switchgear, and then powers the 16 set of chargers.
Pretty safe to say this is the most sophisticated thing going on in Bakersfield these days.
Probably, yeah. And it's definitely the first of its kind in the world. I mean, it's the first microgrid deployed in the U.S. or anywhere that I know of, as well as the first site to have megawatt charging in the U.S.
Yeah, I want to go back to Blythe for just one moment, because I think Blythe is also where we're going to start to see some public charging through Green Lane come out from there and head east. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, there's a lot that comes in there's a lot of freight that goes from the port areas on the I-10 eastbound towards Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and so forth. So Blythe is definitely on our roadmap. We want to have something there. And we've also already interacted with shippers that have freight that goes on those corridors, and they've come to us and said, what does it take to electrify this freight? So we know that Blythe is an important site for us, and then there's many more that we're working on outside of the U.S. that you don't see, or outside of California that we're working on that will come within the next few years.
Right. Well, this has been terrific. Nice tour. Great to catch up, and really appreciate your time.
Likewise, glad to be here.
You know, charging is a big deal at WattEV. Obviously, this is a charger that is not working because we're in a display, and that's good, because I really don't want to encounter this. But you know what? I think getting caught up with Salim Youssefzadeh on this show and understanding all that needs to happen, and really all that is happening, is pretty illustrative of what can happen in this industry. So thanks to Salim, thanks to WattEV, and we will see you next time.